So I was going to film today and be silly and creative and make a video, but I just couldn't bring myself to be silly and goofy and make jokes when the entire country is talking about one thing: the Bondi Beach Hanukkah shooting. It looks like 15 people were shot dead, including 2 rabbis, a 10-year-old girl, and a Holocaust survivor. Another 40-odd people were injured in what appears to be an extremist Islamic State-inspired terrorist attack targeting a Hanukkah at the beach celebration in Sydney. The shooters were a 50-year-old father and 24-year-old son duo. They carried the attack out with these big, large rifles. They apparently had like 3 explosive devices in their car, along with an Islamic State flag. One gunman was shot dead, and the son was unbelievably disarmed by a bystander, which we're going to talk about in a minute. The shooting lasted like less than half an hour, and it is now the worst shooting attack on this country since Port Arthur. I think it's the worst attack on the mainland that we've ever had. It's awful. Grief and heartbreak are being felt across the nation. The entire country is in mourning, and I think we're all thinking about the people and communities affected by this horrific attack. I wanted to get up and talk about it today because, unfortunately, the discourse surrounding an event like this can often be incredibly impactful as to how we as a nation move forward from an event like this. I mean, on a personal note, it is just so incredibly sad seeing all of the images out of Sydney. And nowadays, with the instant nature of social media, I was seeing videos of the attack before it had even finished. You know what I mean? I mean, now I'm sure most of us have seen much of the images out of the event. It is horrific, and it is horrible and awful, and it makes me so sad. One thing I'm left feeling is that, you know, I even mentioned in my last video that shootings is not something we really have to worry about in Australia. And so many people, and myself included, I think looked at this attack and had the feeling that, like, you know, this is not supposed to happen here. Gun violence and mass shootings is not an Australian thing, and it's incredibly sad that now we've been struck by this awful tragedy, and now we have to reckon with this awful event. In 2025, we have to look at, you know, the gun situation. We have to look at people being isolated and radicalized. It's no longer an abstract issue. It is something that we have to deal with now. And that sucks too. And it's not going to be easy. Unfortunately, it will likely be very ugly. A lot of people have a lot of ugly things to say. And a lot of people, I think, are taking this moment to put into the discourse things that I think are pretty vile and pretty self-serving. Like, a lot of people have been wanting to play the blame game, point their finger at Anthony Albanese, or try to say that, you know, you should have voted for them instead and then things would have been better. There's just a lot of cynical posting going on right now. A lot of people after an attack like this are going to turn their ire towards immigrant communities, and I think that's really sad. I mean, for 2 reasons, right? For one, the father and son that did the shooting, the son was born here, so the son's not an immigrant, and the dad moved here over 20 years ago. So any amount of cracking down on immigration over the last 10 years wouldn't have kicked him out. He would still be here and still have potentially been able to commit this atrocity. So I don't think the answer to this kind of crime is any amount of mass deportation or cracking down on immigration. To me, I think whenever an individual is driven or isolated to a place where they can be so radicalized as to shoot their fellow people, their fellow human beings, and kill all these people, obviously in this case, it was targeted against a Jewish community, which means that anti-Semitism would have been thrown into that mix of isolation and extremism. And to me, I think the ultimate answer to that, right, the best remedy for that kind of a sickness is community, and is having people interact with each other, having a society and having communities where nobody falls out of the social landscape. Nobody falls into this deep isolationist place where they're so likely to become radicalized and to hate society and to hate people and to want to burn it all down. I don't want to see any more of that. That's what brought us this event, in my opinion, and I want this shooting to be the last shooting we have for a long time. Our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, had some words to say regarding the shooting, and I thought we could hear what he has to say.
The National Security Committee was convened as a matter of urgency, and we have just come from it. This afternoon, there has been a devastating terrorist incident at Bondi at the Hanukkah by the Sea celebration. This is a targeted attack on Jewish Australians on the first day of Hanukkah, which should be a day of joy, a celebration of faith, an act of evil anti-Semitism, terrorism that has struck the heart of our nation. An attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on every Australian, and every Australian tonight will be, like me, devastated on this attack on our way of life. There is no place for this hate, violence and terrorism in our nation. Let me be clear, we will eradicate it. Amidst this vile act of violence and hate will emerge a moment of national unity where Australians across the board will embrace their fellow Australians of Jewish faith at this dark moment for our nation.
Yeah, I think that's quite well said, and as heartbreaking and as awful as an event that this is, I think it's good that we can have a leader with a level head, speak calmly and respectfully, and urge the country to come together, to unite, and to not be driven into further division. I've unfortunately seen a lot of people already try to use this attack to further divide the country. People have been saying that this is the justification needed to just have a major, massive crackdown on immigration, to do mass deportations, and I just think those people are missing the forest for the trees. This duo, one of them was born here and is a citizen, so no amount of immigration crackdown could have stopped him. The dad came in 1998 on a student visa, so any amount of mass deportation, crackdown on immigration, going back 20 years wouldn't have stopped this guy. So I think we should try to keep the solutions relevant. They've already talked about tightening gun laws, which they did after the last big mass shooting, which was Port Arthur. It looks like this time they're going to limit gun ownership to citizens only. They're going to limit the amount of guns you're able to register, and they're going to require a certain re-registration. You have to get the registration reviewed every couple of years, I guess. And to me, that sounds like pretty reasonable and sensible action, which I'm glad the country is taking. It may not necessarily prevent something like this from ever happening again, but we have to try and do something. Right? We have to make an effort legislatively to try and prevent something like this from ever happening again. I've seen, unfortunately, cynical political actors use this moment to criticize the leader and criticize Anthony Albanese, our Prime Minister, which I've always said I think is totally your right to criticize the leader of the country. But at a time like this, to use a tragedy like this to score cheap political points, to me, just feels in poor taste. Like it or not, Albo is our leader in this moment, and we look to the leader to get us through times like this, and I think we should all rally behind the leader to lead us through this in a positive way, whether you like him or not. You can vote him out at the next election, but he's the leader now. I also saw Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, speak about this tragedy, and I felt his commentary was quite distasteful. He was trying to blame Anthony Albanese's recognition of Palestine for a rise in anti-Semitism, which I just don't see the concrete connection. I understand what he's going for, but I don't think these two deranged guys who did this shooting did it because they were emboldened by the state recognition of Palestine. I just think that's more cheap, cynical political point grabbing. It also appears that initially Benjamin Netanyahu implied that the bystander that took down the gunman and is by all accounts a hero, Netanyahu implied initially that that guy was Jewish, and a lot of people I've seen online wanted to imply that that guy was a Lebanese Christian, and I just think that that kind of speculation, again, for the purposes of seemingly scoring political points at a time like this, is just so useless. In fact, former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull actually had some words for Benjamin Netanyahu on this topic.
I would respectfully say to Bibi Netanyahu, please stay out of our politics.
Hours after this terrible incident happened, he very openly blamed your Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, by saying that the recognition of Palestine was pouring fuel on anti-Semitism in Israel, in Australia, and he just, and that the government was weak in its response to those warning signs. Do you buy that criticism from the Israeli government?
Look, no, I do not. And I would respectfully say to Bibi Netanyahu, please stay out of our politics. If you've got that kind of commentary to make, you are not helping. I know Netanyahu. I know him pretty well, actually. And I understand where he's coming from, his passion and so forth. But this is not helping, and it's not right. I mean, as Albanese has said, and as we all know, as Wes Streeting has said in your country, the vast majority of countries in the world recognise Palestine as a state.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a good point there. Obviously, I don't have a problem with Netanyahu or any foreign leader commenting on the nature of this tragedy, but just send kind thoughts and prayers, man. Like, why are you inserting yourself into this horrific moment to just sling mud and make things worse? Like, say something helpful or just don't say something at all, in my opinion. So I want to finish this video on like a positive, good silver lining kind of a note, and that is to focus on the widely recognized hero, Ahmed al-Ahmed, who took down one of the gunmen. He took down the son. You can see in the video that he grabs the gun, points it at the son, and doesn't shoot him, but puts the gun down. In doing so, risks his own life because the second shooter is still active when he took down the son. He got shot twice, I believe, and had to go to hospital and get surgeries. And even with that reality, he still chose to go and disarm one of the shooters to try and save lives. It appears he was a Syrian Muslim who was a former police officer and immigrated to Australia and is now a citizen. And to me, what he did is just the full embrace of Australian mateship and of the Australian way. To see people getting hurt and being targeted like that, and to go and help them and to put your own life on the line to try and bring good to this awful situation, to me, is incredibly heroic. He's already been visited and recognised by the Premier of New South Wales and by the Prime Minister Albanese. And of course, while the majority of people after this attack have been just outpouring love and support for the local community, for Ahmed al-Ahmed, and just keeping the Jewish community in Australia in their hearts, because this must have just been so awful and touched them in such a horrible way. Unfortunately, while most people have responded that way, there has also been, I've seen, a torrent of anti-Muslim and anti-Islam rhetoric trying to demonize and target Muslim Australians who are here, who are citizens, who have integrated and aren't hateful, extremist, isolated bigots like the two people that committed this attack. And I think that someone like Ahmed al-Ahmed shows the best of not just the Muslim community, but the best of Australia, the best kind of a citizen you can be in a situation like this. And so I think focusing on his heroism and his actions in that moment is a really important thing for us to remember, that when we see what's happening now, this just awful pain, this open wound of the community in Australia, we can't choose to turn away. You know, we have to embrace our fellow Australians. We have to unite. We have to look to each other and show love and embrace community, because I truly think to get through something like this, we will be far stronger together with each other, embracing our fellow Australians of all backgrounds and all nationalities. And if you live here and if you love this way of life, then you're Australian and you want to fight for a better Australia. So I say, after a horrific, awful attack like this, we all need to come together. We all need to show each other that Australian love and mateship that makes this country so beautiful. I think we need to commemorate the 15 victims, keep them in our hearts, and never forget this awful, horrible attack on the Jewish community and move forward striving to be better, striving to have better communities, a better society that doesn't let people fall into some kind of an extremist rabbit hole, and also doesn't let communities like the Jewish community be targeted in this kind of a way. We need to foster safety, we need to foster kindness and community, and yeah, that's really all I can think to end this video. I sincerely want to thank Ahmed Al-Ahmed for such a heroic act. I really think he needs some kind of state recognition in some sort of a way. We don't really do Medal of Honors or whatever, but whatever Australian medal exists to commemorate this kind of heroism, I think he deserves it. It's pretty obvious to me. And to the Jewish community in Australia, I really hope that you can hold each other tight and feel the love that the nation is sending you, because we all want peace and we want kindness. We want you all to feel safe and at home. And we want our home to be safe. Almost every Australian doesn't want to see anything like this happen ever again. I hope we can all pull together and let this tragedy be the last one for a long time. Happy Hanukkah to the Jewish community. I really hope that the rest of Hanukkah can be filled with love and peace and kindness. And I hope the Jewish community knows that, we won't forget this and we won't forget the pain that you've felt. We're going to make it right. We're all in this together and we can all get through this together, I hope. All right. Well, that was obviously a very heavy video. That's where it's going to come to an end. I appreciate you listening to what I have to say. Just hold the people in your life tight, because right now, love and community is something we really need to hold on to. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.